One, go.
Hello, big boy.
Hello.
What is up?
What is up?
What is up?
Everything. I'm good.
Everything's up.
This is episode 15 of Big Boy Talk. The third one of our priorities series, if you can call it that. And it's gonna be about what makes a society better, or what
More
makes
civilized.
it civilized. Okay. And is it harsh laws that make people follow them because they're afraid, or is it education and investing in education? And
But let me clear that. Not harsh laws, meaning that you have a very narrow way to go through life in that society. So you're not allowed to do that and that and that and that. No, we're talking about harsh laws, meaning that if you steal something in that society, you are punished for stealing. Not you're not treated like oh, okay, we'll see about that. By that I mean harsh laws, not that you have so many laws that you don't have freedom. Because there are many countries, not that many, but there are some countries in this world where the laws are harsh, but they are very restrictive. The communist society does that. You're not allowed to do a lot of things, and they call it a civilized society. But I would like to see this combined with the freedom of taking action, but with the restraints of not hurting others, keeping the place safe and clean. And
yeah, that's the beautiful and dangerous thing about democracy, in that you're allowed to do anything you want, but there are consequences. But you still can do almost everything that you want.
yes.
That's interesting. One thought that I had just now is we could take our country, or an imaginary country, and talk about what that country should invest in. So where they put their money when they think about the future and they think about making a better country. And in our country, education, you could say, is not a big priority. I think the budget is something like 2 or 3% of the total budget, whereas in Western Europe it's a lot higher than that,
Yes,
from what I know.
We have to separate this: the formal education and the informal education. So when we talk about countries, of course we're talking about the formal education, the schools and the system that educates or teaches kids a lot of things. But when we think about education, we think about the informal one that takes place at home, that is based on values, on morality, the way you should handle things, the way you should handle society, others, and this combined with the formal education make I think, in my opinion, an educated man or the educated person. So you are exposed to a lot of information. You know your history. You know different languages. You know things, but also you have that education that you got from home. That teaches you how to treat others, how to respect boundaries, how to respect your neighbors, how to help, how to be generous, how to be altruistic, and all that makes you, in my opinion, an educated person.
It's interesting, because if I think about what would make me say that somebody is not educated, I'm thinking about informal education more than anything.
True.
If I'm with a group of people and somebody picks his nose, or
throw something on the ground, like a plastic bottle,
Yeah,
you'll say he's uneducated,
Yeah.
even though he has a master's degree.
Yeah, or I don't even have to know what his schooling is. I'm gonna say, wow, he's not educated. But on the other hand, maybe on a higher level, when I hear somebody speak at a school or something like that, and his speech is really precise and clear, and he expresses ideas that I didn't think about, are maybe a bit complicated, but I can still understand them, then I say, wow, that's a really educated man. Even though I don't know if he picks his nose in private. But that's interesting.
But he can do that. In private, it's okay.
So is he educated if during his speech he picks his nose? Is he...
It's a conundrum.
Yeah. But it's interesting that the perception could go either way. But I think, relationally, or morally, as you said, respecting others and making the world better, that's the first thing that people see. And the first thing that you observe when you interact with someone is if he shows respect for you, if he looks at you as a person, a regular person, or somebody that he could learn something from, maybe. And then, when you start to express ideas and things like that, you could get into it. But I also think about reading books. In my experience, and maybe in our experience, there aren't a lot of great books in school. Sometimes I thought that the education system here makes you hate books in a way. It seems like they pick books that aren't really fun to read or interesting.
And you're not at that age really into those books.
Yeah. But when I listen to somebody online who expresses an idea that he understood from a book and then he made practical in his life, I'm really inspired by it a lot of the times. And I would say that maybe a person who reads a lot, even though his formal education isn't great, is more educated than...
True, but for me, all of this, the things that you take from home, the things that you put in yourself, is you educate yourself by reading, by listening to things that help you, and the things that you get in a formal education system like school make you an educated person. But the option to that, and this is something that it's independent in a way that from the laws of the country. So because your parents can teach you something like you have to be nice to your neighbors, but you can at times have a party or have some friends over and be a little loud. If the laws in your country say that after 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock in the evening you have to keep it down, you should be quiet, your parents cannot teach you that if you're already 18. So the laws have to step in and help you respect others, even though you think, oh, it's only once, I don't know, a year. But in this example, you can have an exception. You can go and talk with your neighbors and say, okay, I'm going to have this party. Is it okay with you, all 5 of you, to go to 12 o'clock in the evening? And if they all agree, there's no victim there, because they all agree. So the law is important, because not all the things you can be taught in school or at home.
And there's an element of wisdom to that. So the law says by 10 o'clock you should be quiet. You could go to your neighbors. Since it's your birthday, you probably have a lot of cookies and stuff laying around. And if you bring them something and say, I brought you something.
Your wife did that.
Yeah, my wife recently did that, and for my downstairs neighbor, and he said, I was just gonna come up and ask you to be quiet, but now, since you're saying it's your birthday and you brought me something, even though it's not a lot, oh, that's fine then. So the law didn't change, but you were wise in your approach, and that's gonna lead to acceptance from society, you could say. We could go a little bit into the law part. So we talked about education for a little bit, and let's see what our thoughts are on harsh laws. Or
Again, harsh laws. I don't mean by that laws that restrict you from like in the communist era they had the plates numbers law. So if you had an even one Sunday, all the cars that had even plate numbers will go. If you had an uneven plate number,
you can't drive your car.
You cannot drive your car in that Sunday. So that was a law, a harsh law, but that was restrictive. And now I think about it, it's kind of stupid. But they had the reason. But that was a harsh law, but it was a restrictive one. I'm talking about here about the things that in some countries, even in our country, if you do something that is against the law, there's no one to implement that law, to make you responsible, to keep you accountable for what you did.
Or I don't know if there's no one, but there's not enough.
Not enough, yeah.
Or they're not taking it seriously enough, yeah.
Or some of the offenses the things that are punishable by law, they are put aside because people say, okay, there are more important things at stake, so we don't have time to think about those ones. I think about the one is the seatbelt. If the law says that you have to wear a seatbelt, your kids have to wear the seatbelt, and some, I don't know how they call it, the small chairs in the back of the car. So that's the law. But in our country, probably if you get pulled over and they find out that you don't have that, it's kind of hard, or they give you a ticket. But I have no idea.
Okay.
Because no one stopped me to check on this. But that law, when enforced, makes you safer as a society, and at some point makes you feel. I do it with my seatbelt. I will give you an example. I didn't give you in the previous one. So, do you know how I wear why I wear the seatbelt all the time? I used to have a small thing that I will put in there to stop the beeping in my car. But one night I was coming home from game night with the boys, and
the library.
Yeah, no, someone's at home, and we were playing computer games, and a policeman pulled me over, checked my papers, and just when I was about to leave, said, and one more thing, wear your seatbelt. And for me, I blushed and I said, okay. I took that thing out, put my seatbelt on, and on my way home, I was thinking, he could have given me a ticket. He could have given me a lecture about how important it is. But he knew that I knew all those things. And he appealed to my human side and said, it's not good for you to do that. And then I thought about my kids and what kind of an example I give them by not wearing the seatbelt. And then I thought, okay, do I want in our society, people to ignore this law just because they don't have the mood to do this. And I said, okay, from now on, I'll wear the seatbelt. And from, I think it's 4 years ago,
Okay.
I wear the seatbelt all the time just because someone who had the authority told it to me in a way that he made me understand that he didn't even explain why it's good for me.
Because you knew.
Because he knew I knew.
Yeah.
And from that time, I understand why didn't I wear the seatbelt before that? I was lazy, kind of, but I was a rebel. I was against the system. Not really. You can't be a rebel. I'm not wearing the seatbelt. I'm against the system. Doesn't really work. It's every anarchist, I told you that, wants the law to apply.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to be run down on the sidewalk by a car.
They don't want to be the victim.
Yeah. So I respect the law because someone enforced it to me by not giving me the ticket. So there is a...
Yeah, forgiveness is a powerful thing, but also that made me think of... So I want to make a bigger point. It's also about personal example, a thing that I go into a lot. And I was thinking about the personal example of the people who are enforcing the law. And I think that's really important.
True.
And it's important in society for a policeman to not talk on the phone while they're driving, to wear their seatbelt, and to do the things that they want to make other people do. And it's important on a smaller scale in your family, as you say with your kids. You can't tell them not to do something that you do. You can't tell them to wear their seatbelts when you don't wear it, and maybe they will. But it's a lot less powerful if you don't do it and you tell them to do it. So, and also for me, if I want people to not throw things on the street, to pick up something off the street if it's easy and make it cleaner, but if I don't do that, my words aren't gonna have a lot of power to them. So that's, I think, very important. And I had another point in my mind. About mercy and power, and I think I also heard this from Jordan Peterson at one point. True power implies having authority and not being harmless. Nobody is really inspired by somebody who doesn't fight people or inflict harm upon people if that person isn't capable of doing it. So he was talking about the fact that you're not walking around and not hurting people. That's not impressive. But if you're walking around with a sword that you know how to use, but you don't use it for harm, that's a lot more powerful. And I even thought about that with you and the policeman. He had the authority to punish you, and he used it, but he used it in a way that didn't hurt your ego, and he got to you in a very powerful way.
And if you're thinking about Gandhi, that he didn't have the power to fight, you're absolutely wrong, because he had thousands and thousands that were supporting him, and he insisted on a peaceful manifestation, although he had a horde of people behind behind him. So he chose that, but he was followed by people who were willing to go the other way. So that supports your idea that you can. I think Andrei Plesh, if you should read him, he says you cannot be tolerant to someone if you're the minority and you don't have the power. Only the power structure can be tolerant, because the minority, that's your state of actual being. You have to tolerate the majority, because you're not really tolerate them. You cannot affect them. But if you have the power and you tolerate, that is the thing that you are capable of doing. You can either do that or not tolerate. So that is when you have a choice. If you have the power.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so
20 minutes already.
yeah. So I think that we made a lot of points both ways. I think that it's important to educate, to start small with education when you're a child, or do it with your children, and then as a society you need to somehow encourage laws that keep your behavior in certain boundaries that let other people also be free.
That's one more thing about the when we think about Germans, we think about people that are really a bit uptight and they follow the rules, and that is true. But I've been in, I think, 2007 at Oktoberfest in Munich, and people were drunk, a lot of them. But the rule was you cannot drink outside the huge tents.
Oh.
You can eat, you can have fun, you can be drunk outside, but you cannot drink outside. They will not sell you alcohol there, and they will not let you leave with alcohol outside. You can drink it inside, then go outside. There were people at the subway who were drinking, but they were not respecting the law, but not in a bad way. They would get it from somewhere else, the alcohol. So, but inside the tents, you can have fun. You can drink. You can cheer. You can dance. But they had security, and their security, they wouldn't mess around. So if two people got in a fight, and I was there with my wife, they would form a V formation like this, and with whistles in their mouth, they're all huge guys, they would go and they would plow through to the masses of people to get to the scandal and get those people outside. And they had whistles, and they would whistle, make way, make way. And if you didn't make way, you would say, "Oh, what's up with you?" You would get out of the way by force. They would throw you away from their path because they had something to resolve. So in their approach of enforcing the law, they were aggressive, but aggressive with the people that were not respecting the loose laws of the tent. So you were allowed to drink, have fun, yell, dance, but not fight. Don't fight with someone else. But if you don't respect that small law or rule of that tent, the punishment was harsh. So people, huge guys, would come and take you by force and throw you out. So this is how I understand the law. You have the general rules, and you have some margin to play with. Sometimes the punishment is greater than the deed, but it's most of the time it's according to what you did. But if you don't respect others and you break the law in a way that hurts others, and it's something that we all agree that is wrong, you should be punished. Because if you don't get punished, if those guys wouldn't intervene like that, that guy would become a bully. Because he would beat up one guy, and then the other guys or the other tables around him would be afraid of that guy because no one stopped him. And this happens in society all the time. Someone steals or is aggressive and beats up someone, and if nothing bad happens to him from the authority, all the people become afraid of that person.
Because he's gonna do it again.
Because he's gonna do it again. And if you have that state of fear in that society and in that small community, will only get worse by the time, because he will be abusive and someone at some point another guy will be abusive to someone else, and then corruption comes along, because if this guy is not getting punished, how can I resolve my own problems without the law? I can pay him to intimidate someone else. And this is how corruption starts, and this is a primitive behavior, but it still happens nevertheless.
And that's why you need authorities and you need laws that are applied.
Yes.
And are harsh enough to discourage that behavior. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so
That's it.
that's it for now. And yeah, we'll see you next week.
Huh? Yes.